I will now take the settlement for this meeting of the Kilbride Area Committee held on the 26th of August 2025. Following members are present: Councillors John Anderson, Archie Buchanan, Matt Buchanan, Jerry Convery. Councillor Margaret Cooper is not present. Councillor Marique Equi is present. We have apologies from Councillor Joe Fagan. Councillor Grant Ferguson is present. Councillor Gladys Ferguson Miller is not present. Councillor Elise Friend is not present. Councillors Benny Gray and Susan Kerr are present. Councillor Hugh MacDonald is not present. And the following members are all present: Councillors Elaine McDougall, Kirsten Robb, Graham Scott, David Watson and Kirsty Magnus. Thank you, and I'll pass you back to the Chair for today's business.
Thanks, Stuart. The item 1, declaration of interest. Declaration of interest, anybody? No. Thank you. Item 2, minutes of previous meeting. I'll move the minutes to the correct record and ask for a second. As members are agreed. Agreed. Thank you. The items for noting: the item 3, local policing annual update, and I'll invite Chief Inspector Paul to speak to the presentation.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for inviting me along today. Go to the next slide. Obviously, I'm Paul Doyle. I'm the local Chief Inspector for East Kilbride, Straven, Rutherglen and Cambuslang. I'm here standing in for Karen McCall, the Area Inspector here, who sadly can't be with us today. And obviously within East Kilbride, we represent our community policing teams, our response policing teams, and that's all supported by our local and national units. And we aim to do most of our policing business in partnership with external agencies, other emergency responders and our communities. Can you go to the next slide, please? So, sure, please. So I thought for the purpose of this presentation, we'd stick to the themes of the Chief Constable's 2030 vision, which is going to be safer communities, less crime, supported victims and a thriving workforce. So in terms of our safer communities, the main themes at the moment is going to be reducing youth crime through community engagement, diversion activities and law enforcement. So in terms of that, we have a multi-agency approach as directed by the Scottish Government, where we are looking to work with the antisocial task force, the antisocial teams, housing, education and engaging with our youth hubs, so we're getting that holistic approach to tackling youth violence and disorder within our communities. And what we're seeing through doing that and working with the Scottish Violence Reduction Agency is we're identifying offenders early on, linking them in with either social work, support, education support or diversionary activities, and then as a final step taking that law enforcement route, with it then being reported on to either the Children's Report or, depending on age, the Crown Prosecution Service. And through doing that, that's really going to inform the Youth Violence Reduction Plan, which we have now established within Lanarkshire as a whole. And we have certain aims and objectives that we're now working to over the next few months to take it as a division and try and reduce that number down. Obviously, within the Greater East Kilbride area, we have had some rather tragic circumstances over the last few months. So the aim will be so we're getting early engagement into that and trying to detect and defer that on. Go to the next slide, please. In terms of less crime, very much still focused on intelligence-led policing. So that's essentially working with our analysts so we know exactly where we should be looking for our hotspots, putting uniformed officers into those areas, special resources into those areas, and working in partnership with national resources in terms of operational support division where necessary to get that backfill in things like horses, quad bikes, drone support, and other specialist resources that we might need to tackle specific problems within different communities. And obviously we're going to tailor that within this area, but also even more rural areas like Straven. So we're getting that kind of tailored approach for each area, depending on what they need. Very much in terms of tactical plans for this one. So having an analyst basically produce who our top offenders are, and then targeting and taking a direct response to that. What our areas are that we're seeing emerging crime trends, and trying to act effectively within there as well. And within that, we're then looking at things like our retail task force, where we are working in partnership with other agencies such as RACS, Scottish Business Resilience Centre, to tackle emerging crime trends such as shoplifting, which we're seeing a rise in. So a lot of work with partner agencies as well. Can we have the next slide? So we're getting that again, that joined up approach to tackling crime within our communities. I thought it'd be useful to kind of give some figures of how we've performed over the last year as well. So we've seen a marked increase in theft by shoplifting, and that may well be partly due to the increased cost of living, but we are also seeing it as an organised crime trend as well. So we've got 23.8% increase in shopliftings over the last year in Lanarkshire Division. What we've seen a decrease in is theft by housebreakings, 34.9% reduction in them. Now, some of that will come down to people taking some additional security steps, such as like doorbells, which we're finding very effective. But also, I think we've done a lot of work around what we were previously constituting as a housebreaking. So a lot of things that we were previously recorded as a housebreaking were really vandalism, just destruction to doors. So we're doing a lot of work with our analysts so we're accurate with recording crime figures. Our detection rates around speeding offences increased by 41.9% last year. And a lot of that's down to the fact that we're directed patrols. We've actually cops on the ground just going out and looking at those kind of motoring offences. And that's why I think we've seen a rise by 22.6% increase in our detections of drivers under the influence of drinking drugs. We've seen our robberies over the last year decrease by 14.5% as well, and anti-social behaviour crimes, which essentially kind of street drinking, vandalisms, that sort of thing, reduced by 7.6% as well. You move on to the next slide. So very much one of the biggest areas that we are developing at the moment, in line with the 2030 vision, is the need to support victims. So we've done a lot of work around gender-based violence. Domestic abuse teams are trying to work very closely with partners to increase that kind of education engagement in that sector. So we've seen a lot of our disclosure schemes, want a better word, DISTAS, increase in our referral rates. So we're 883 requests, which is an increase of 30% from the year before. We've seen a 17% increase in the power to tell applications and a 61% increase in the right to ask. Now that really goes around the kind of the domestic abuse of people either suspecting the partner was involved in domestics in a previous relationship, so we can safeguard that individual, or friends and family appealing to the police around those areas as well. Missing persons. Last year alone, we had 1,186 reports of missing people. So a lot of that kind of group will come from young persons and children, and a lot of them are going to come from the care sector. So there's been a lot of work done with our National Missing Persons team and our Divisional Missing Persons team to try and reduce that level of reporting, but also safeguarding those children. And what I mean by that is essentially working in not-at-home protocols with the care homes, so we're not engaging or not criminalising children from an early age from the care sector, and we're giving them the appropriate level of support and care as much as we can. And we've done a lot around the road safety campaigns to identify our positive results there. And we've also got a lot of engagement going on with the deaf community and deaf hubs, which we set to establish in Lanarkshire. In terms of retail crime as well, we've established DINOS, which is specifically looking at younger persons involved in organised crime in terms of those sort of retail thefts. And in terms of hate crimes, protecting minority communities, we've had 279 hate crimes reported, which with 61.6% of them being detected. And 44% of these are generally directed towards police officers, so we are the biggest figure within that sector. Going on then to the last bit. Excuse me. Big commitment from the Chief Constable is going to be around thriving the workforce, but also education and empowering that workforce. And what I mean by that is we've recognise that a lot of our officers come from minority communities. They have a lot of lived experiences, so it's how do we share those lived experiences across our division, so we're increasing a kind of understanding and awareness in our officers, so essentially they can better deliver services to our communities. So to that end, we've organised 4 events. We've had speakers from the police come and talk to officers regarding coming from a different background, gender-based, a wide variety of different topics to try and increase that kind of education of our officers, so we're representing our communities in a better fashion. And a lot more investment in workforce wellbeing as well, so pathways to work to support officers returning from maternity leave, long periods of absence. So essentially we're getting the workforce back and we can deploy them more effectively into our streets. And your safety matters, so protecting those officers that have been injured at work or assaulted at work, and working more closely with the Fiscal's office, so we're getting outcomes that we would expect and supporting those officers. And that's really it in terms of the presentation for today. If there's any questions I can possibly take on?
Sure.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks for that report. The current situation around Scotland is Kilbride, and I suppose across the UK is quite heavily involved. Knife crime is quite a big issue. Now there is a chap in Kilbride who's trying to get all the partners together, the police, council and everybody else interested in trying to prevent knife crime. I just wonder if you've got any contact with them. If there's any plans to set up something where we could get all the partners together and try and end this. I just wonder, is there any figures for stop and search in East Kilbride for knife crime? If you remove knives from people, is it prevalent? Is there a big issue within East Kilbride? I know the young chap sadly lost his life from East Kilbride, but it wasn't committed in East Kilbride. But I'm just wondering, what is the situation within East Kilbride? Maybe South Lanarkshire, like that. Thanks.
Okay, I'll try and break that down into different points, but if I forget anything, please. So in terms of contact with the individual, I personally haven't had, but I need to check with the community inspector and see if she has. More than willing to engage with anyone that wants to discuss this, and see how we can work in partnership. We obviously have a lot of work with a weekly hub meeting with anti-social teams, fire and rescue, and a lot of these sort of crimes are discussed during that meeting. And we have routine engagement with education and social work as well. But any other partners or community groups that want to engage with us and discuss this and see if we can identify a joint method of approach to it, then yeah, absolutely. Definitely be willing to do that. In terms of stop searches, I don't have figures with me today, but yes, we do. So I get a monthly return essentially for all the stop searches that every officer under my command does and what they were for. So we will review that. It's reviewed both as a locally through me and as a division and nationally as well. Part of that so that we are comfortable as an organisation that we're not targeting anybody in particular or particular groups. But a lot of that's just to make sure as well that we're doing the right thing in terms of stop searches. I personally think it's a great tool, as long as we're doing it in the right way, that we're targeting the right people for the right reasons. There's a legislative purpose behind what we're doing. But I think it works very well twofold. One, you catch people with weapons on them, or it acts as a deterrent. Other people are carrying weapons because the police are going to stop them. So I'm very pro that activity and encouraging officers and monitoring how much they're doing around that, so that we are being productive in the right way. So yes, we can look at that and supply you with general figures if you're looking for them. We usually do that on a kind of monthly basis rather than as a year. But if it's a specific task we have, then please feel free to email me and we can look at organising that. Forgive me, what was the other part?
No, it was really just about this big thing with just a major issue like what we're doing. Is there an issue in East Kilbride with it? You know, is it a average, is it above the average, is it below the average? Should people be concerned about it? Or I mean, that came across any of myself. So I know people are worried about it, especially when they see a headline. And they think every youth is run a bit by knife, or it's very, very few. Most youths are very good, do a lot of good work, but just the headlines sometimes, so I just wonder if you could reassure them that it's safe in East Kilbride. We have about 5 grandkids, well, I mean, so I'm worried about their safety. If it is an issue, I don't think it's an issue, but just wonder if you could maybe just sort of say, their officers are finding an issue with the people with knives, so.
So no, generally I would say no, there's not an issue in this area. From reviewing the kind of the numbers of police officers we have in these, and in terms of our crime figures or reports of people running about with offensive weapons, specifically knives, no, especially compared to other areas of Scotland and the wider UK, the number of crimes using offensive weapons within the general East Kilbride Strathaven area is comparatively low. It's not to say it doesn't happen, obviously it does. What I would assure people is we have a process in place that when we find someone, detect someone with a knife, we will review that in a morning meeting. We'll discuss that person. That person will then have their image put in an electronic briefing, so officers are aware that that person is a knife carrier, and intelligence log will be submitted regarding that person, so that there is a wider knowledge. If they're involved in multiple parts of crime, we will create an instruction package that will be assigned to either a policing team or individual for them to basically disrupt that individual's activities. We'll take that also to the hub meetings we're having housing and social to look at how that's affecting the tenancies. So there's a whole bit of work that goes into that. So we're not just saying we've reported it on to the court services and then we're done with this. What we're looking is at wider engagement from partners, but also what we're doing in terms of the police to take that on in a longer programme. We know that an individual that's carrying a knife and being involved in violent acts of violence is probably not a one and done incident. It can be when it's kids, and that's why we're kind of looking to engage social work, education, the family, and really divert them away from that. When we have an adult who's behaving in that fashion, then we're really looking at other steps there. But we take it very seriously, and there's a pretty robust process in there to try and disrupt that person.
Okay, next, and then Kirsty.
I was just going to Councillor Ferguson here, so thank you, Chair. Just 3 questions actually, they're kind of related. Thank you for the presentation there. It was really interesting to see that you've included the deaf community there, and that was interesting as well. Now, obviously, with regards to the deaf community, obviously, I think it was the terminology that's used. It was that sign language users. If it was just the way that the messaging is worded or how the text appears on the screen. So if it's a deaf, it's a capital D and small d. It's just to differentiate between the deaf community or the sign language community and the hard of hearing community. And that's something is just to take on board. And the second one, what kind of work have you done with the deaf community? It's just to find out what has been happening. And the third thing, actually, with police officers, I've seen. Now, I know that East Kilbride, obviously, the deaf community is quite large, but I don't know if there's any police officers that are able to sign, and if there are, well done. But if there's not, maybe it's something to look at. But thank you for the presentation. It was thoroughly interesting.
Apologies first on the lack of terminology. That was me that wrote the presentation, so it's entirely on me and my mistake. I'll certainly adjust that next time. In terms of the police officers, yes, we do, but we don't have a lot. But it is an area of work that we've actually invested some time and money into to try and get some officers trained at different levels, a fairly basic level and a more moderate level as well. So we have several within the police force, especially in the West, but it is something that's been developed at the moment. We have one of our officers at Motherwell headquarters who is routinely kind of emailing out useful pieces of sign language in sheets so officers can try and follow, so that some basic communication is afforded to them. In terms of the wider work, if you'd be kind enough to drop me an email, I can certainly send you on some links to what we're doing in that area. It's not really my area of expertise. I know that we've had, as part of lived experiences, some inputs from different parts of the community there to try and increase awareness of our officers, so that their understanding going forward is increased, and with some inputs to our sergeants and inspector forums as well. So again, we're trying to get that education and engagement at those levels. Other than that, in terms of the deaf hubs and some of the other engagement processes, I can certainly find that information and get it sent on to you.
No, that's super. Thank you very much. Thank you for that. It'd be interesting to find out exactly what's been involved. So perfect. Thanks very much.
Kirsty.
Hi, thanks, Chair. Thanks again, Chief Inspector Doyle, for that presentation. I suppose what I noted in the Safer Communities slide is that the term youth predominates, and I suppose it's just an observation that almost gives the impression that any issue to do with safer communities, that somehow being a young person is problematic. I also was pleased to hear about the support that victims are getting in relation to gender-based violence, but I wondered again, given that 20% of all crimes relate to domestic abuse, and that doesn't include sexual violence, why the work that the police do, that I know they do, isn't reflected in safer communities or perhaps in less crime. Thank you.
In terms of the youth aspect, first of all, it's in no way meant to demean youths or say that we're targeting or blaming them for all crime. It's just a bit of work that we have ongoing at the moment across the division. What we have seen, or what was part of the feedback we've had from our communities, is a general concern around youth violence and that kind of gang-related violence. So there's work ongoing in terms of defining exactly what classes as a gang, but also to give that reassurance back to our communities that we are taking that type of criminality, that activity, in a serious way, and we're trying to work in partnership to basically deal with that in an effective way, so that we're not necessarily criminalising youths, but we're getting that early engagement in there, so that we're protecting them as well. In terms of the domestic abuse is always going to be a huge factor for Police Scotland. It's always going to be a massive focus. We have a huge commitment in terms of policing resources in that area. We have a domestic abuse department within each division. We have rape task force. We have safeguarding. There's a massive bit of work ongoing there. And every day there is a meeting between the kind of local management teams in terms of the DI from that area of business, meeting with the local inspectors and myself, and discussing any crimes of that nature, so that we're getting an appropriate response put in there, and we're making sure that safeguarding is delivered at all times. In terms of our own investment towards our officers, there were several inputs. One really large input last year that was delivered, where we brought up victims of domestic abuse, and they gave a really interesting input to a lot of our officers. So huge investment in education and information, so we're really safeguarding those communities as best we can.
Anybody else?
Hi, could I just come back in? Sorry.
Yeah.
Hi. Thanks very much, Chief Inspector Boyle. It's just that I do remember the presentation last year, and similarly, in terms of safer communities, it was focused on youth. So it would just be really good, it was fantastic to hear from you just now about all the work that's done, because we have to remember as well that young people are quite often the victims of of gender-based violence as well. So it's really important that we try and capture all kind of areas of crime, and that also we just don't focus on what is perception, but it's evidence-based. Any of our work should be based on what is supported by the evidence, as opposed to just what is a perception.
Yeah, absolutely. Going forward, if there's anything from these presentations that you want us to include, please do let us know and we'll adapt to do that. In terms of evidence of criminality, again, one of the reasons we're investing in that kind of youth disorder, youth violence, is because there is the evidence there to support that across the greater Lanarkshire area, but especially in South Lanarkshire. Not just looking, I say that, not just looking at the East Kilbride Straven areas, but also the wider areas for myself, such as Cambuslang, Glen, halfway, but also when we look at other areas such as Hamilton and Blantyre, and the activities or criminality that are being reported there, we realise we need to take steps to try and mitigate that as much as we can. But certainly going forward, if there's ever anything you wish some input on, then please do come back to us and we can get you that.
Okay, thank you very much. It's very interesting. Any last questions before Chief Inspector leaves us? Okay, thank you very much. Thanks very much for that.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Thanks.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Right, we'll move on to item 4, which is unpaid work presentation by Claire. It's a field work manager for Children and Justice Services. Claire.
Many thanks, Chair. And I hope everyone's able to hear me okay, and I'll just proceed to show the presentation in relation to unpaid work. So to introduce myself to those who may not have met me yet, my name is Claire Borden. I am one of the fieldwork managers and I currently oversee our unpaid work service across South Lanarkshire. I've created a presentation today to speak specifically about the impact of unpaid work over the past year in the East Kilbride area, and I'll provide a few slides and an opportunity towards the end for any questions and comments as well. So first, the aim of the presentation today is to provide the committee with some data regarding the numbers of unpaid work hours completed across South Lanarkshire between July 2024 and June 2025. We also look to highlight some of our recent work undertaken by the team to the benefit, and I know, sorry, that says Cambuslang and Rutherglen community, but this presentation relates to East Kilbride, so that's an error. To provide opportunity also for any comments and questions that anyone would have in relation to unpaid work. So start by providing a data capture in relation to new community payback orders where unpaid work or other activity requirements have been imposed. Over the period of July 24 to June 25, we have had 743 new community payback orders imposed in our area. This totals for unpaid work a total of 97,499 hours imposed, and during that same time period we have successfully been able to complete 62,633 hours across the South Lanarkshire community. Referrals today, I've broke down the different referrals in terms of referrals that have come through in terms of specific tasks per area and requests from the different local office areas in terms of unpaid work activity that people are looking for us to undertake. So as you will see there in terms of East Kilbride, over the period of that year we have had 66 different referrals coming through in terms of asking the unpaid work teams to undertake tasks and duties across the East Kilbride locality. You'll see that in comparison to other locality areas where Hamilton had a total of 146, Clydesdale had 100, and Cambuslang and Rutherglen locality had 80 referrals sent to ourselves. Online referrals are being regularly received from a range of different providers and charities and schools. I've given a breakdown there in terms of some of the online referrals that have been received across East Kilbride, in particular a lot of work being undertaken across our sheltered housing complexes in the area, and you'll see there a number of schools as well as the Girls Guides Centre and obviously the Kilbride Hospice. We've also done some work across Allers Allotment, and I can show you some pictures later on of some of the additional work we've done in and around East Kilbride. So we'll start by speaking a little bit about some of the work that had taken place at the Guide Hall. So this was a referral that was received seeking assistance for a general tidy up of the paths and parking area and a request to remove a brick barbecue. So there was a lot of tidying up to be done by the team in a look to try and make this a more presentable space for able to be used by the teams who are working there. Also aimed to make the exterior more aesthetic to residents and show the vicinity of the hall in a better light, because I think for some time there had been some issues in and around the patio areas and that was restricting the use of those areas. So the unpaid work team spent some time going in and clearing some of that up and doing the tasks that were asked of them. These are some examples of how things were before the unpaid work team became involved, and then how things looked thereafter. And the feedback that we've received from the people who made the referral was that this has made a big difference in terms of supporting people to access and utilise that and stop any things like slips or falls and stuff like that that was being created by the moss that was created on that path. This is some work we've also undertaken at Long Calderwood Primary School. So you'll see the before and after pictures there in terms of some of the work, in terms of clearing some of the area and tidying that up so that it's more aesthetic in terms of people's use and to allow those areas to be used more conveniently by the people who use them. So that's some of the work that was undertaken in Long Calderwood Primary. These pictures show more of the work that was taking place and how that was working throughout the period of time and how that looked thereafter. And again, it's to enable the children to have the opportunity to utilise that space in a different way once it's been cleared and tidied up by the unpaid work team. Wanted to speak a little bit about our wood workshop. So where possible, what we're trying to do unpaid work is use reclaimed wood, which can enable our services to build items in our workshop that's based in Blantyre in our Rock and Tibber Centre and look to create items of furniture and things that could be of use to other elements out with the community. So this includes the mastering of mud kitchens, which are used in nurseries and schools, and also the creation of buddy benches and birdhouses. A lot of these items that we've been able to do through pallets and different pieces of wood that have been donated to the service means that we've then been able to create furniture pieces and send these out to local charities, different groups and local schools and nurseries. So this is some of the work that's been undertaken this year. It gives an example of the workbench in terms of those that have went out to the schools and communities. So these are called our mud kitchens, and you'll see there's also the little buddy benches where young people will spend time in the primary schools particularly and in the nursery schools. Wanted to speak a little bit also about the development of our wellbeing group and a specific young persons group for those aged 16 to 25 who receive unpaid work. So what we aimed to do was establish opportunities to provide individuals with more complex needs or where there was additional vulnerabilities that could potentially have created a barrier to the person completing their unpaid work. What we wanted to look at is how we could support and dedicate resource to try and better support people to successfully conclude the elements of their unpaid work whilst giving back to the community. There was an increased focus in terms of well-being and welfare and looking at related activities, which would mean that there was a response effectively from the service to support that ongoing work in the community, but also invest in educational courses and activities in terms of supporting people to engage with aspects of their local communities. Some of the work that's taken place this year includes involvement in a range of different activities, and that involves connection with health. So you'll see there in terms of our Keep Well nursing appointments and a number of different awareness events, we've been promoting things around about mental health supports and also things around about vaping, smoking, and also general wellbeing and health. We've also undertaken a number of educational courses and supported people at unpaid work as part of their other activity element to complete things like the food and hygiene course, and successfully we had 4 service users complete that 6-week course back in December 2024. We've also had a number, particularly of our young people, engage with fire and rescue services to complete the SHIELD programme, which gives added awareness in terms of aspects in the community that are related to fire services and how we can support young people to have a better understanding in terms of some of the work that the fire service do in and around the community. Another area of what we've invested in is around tree planting and working with a range of different groups across the community to look at how we can invest environmentally in terms of supporting areas across South Lanarkshire. These are some of the pictures in terms of the kitchen and education garden. So we have a polytunnel and garden area designated at a number of our plots. And what we've been doing is utilising the vegetables and the fruit that are being grown in those areas to create food and use in our REHIS course to help people with food hygiene training. So you'll see there in terms of the start, the middle and the end, in terms of the food that people are creating in the educational garden and kitchen hub facility. These are some of the examples of the crop that people had managed to attain over the past 12 months, utilising the different polytunnels and garden environmental projects that we've got in and around South Lanarkshire. And a lot of these fruits and vegetables were also donated to charities and homeless charities, for example, in terms of giving access to people from the local community, the stuff that had been grown across our gardens. Also put a slide here relating to our Positive Futures group. So in 2023, unpaid work case managers worked alongside service users to look at a particular course that looked at physical activity, nutrition and awareness of supports available within the community. The way it works is that the group undertake physical activity as part of their group sessions and also invite outside speakers to the group to determine agencies that can offer support across the community and impact on people's integration within their own communities. We also, as mentioned, use the kitchen learning hub so that everyone cooks together and then sits down in terms of a meal towards the end of the day. And again, this is connected to nutrition, cooking on a budget, and ensuring that people have a good understanding of the local services that are available to help them across their local community. These are some of the pictures of some of the activities and some of the work that the Positive Futures group have done. So this is an example of some of the group going out and playing squash in the morning and then coming back and doing some work in and around the garden in terms of then being able to create a healthy lunch that was shared between the group members and the facilitators. This is some of the feedback that we received recently from some of the group members, and one in particular is about talking about relief of stress and how they've developed a more positive outlook in terms of their own mental health. Also aspects in relation to people having moved on from that course in terms of signing up for additional courses which will aid employment and education opportunities in the future. We also undertake a range of remote unpaid work projects across South Lanarkshire, and this is where unpaid work case managers effectively promote the use of remote projects, including survival blankets, which are used for homeless charities, rag rugs, which are generally used by a number of animal charities, and also the creation of diamond art, which are projects effectively that people can undertake from home when necessary, that can then be provided to local beneficiaries, including nurseries, care homes and homeless projects, as well as individuals moving into their new tenancies. And I've got some pictures in terms of some of the work that's been undertaken there. So in relation to the survival blankets, we ask everyone around the local communities to save us their crisp packets. And what we do is there is a kit that can be created that then generates those crisp packets to become foil safety blankets for those that may be in rough sleeping. And these are donated to local homeless charities for distribution across the authority. We also have, you'll see the little dog here down at one of our local animal services, and what we've done is created a number of rugs that are created and stitched out of rags using a kit, and that is then donated to make sure that the animals are safe and looked after in terms of the involvement they might have with different services. These are examples of some of the diamond art project that people have undertaken, and you'll see each of the pixels there is an individual crystal, effectively, that people have taken the time to put into artwork, which has then been distributed again to charities in different areas where they've been displayed on walls in different community settings to again help the environment and make it comfortable for people entering those community hubs. Other activities that we've undertaken over the past year involve a range of different partner services, and as explained previously, we're doing a bit of work with a number of different kind of health and improvement areas and also NHS Lanarkshire. We also go on and explain a wee bit more about our ongoing work with Clyde Climate Forest in relation particularly to tree planting and how we're supporting some of that work across the South Lanarkshire area. What has been committed to by Clyde Climate Forest will be an additional 18 million trees being planted in both urban and rural areas across Glasgow City region and across South Lanarkshire. Unpaid Work team have been working in partnership, and they have been effectively growing and maintaining the tree saplings, as well as growing trees from seeds and then taking them from our kitchen garden and planting them in different designated areas across South Lanarkshire. To date, we've successfully planted over 3,000 trees as part of the Unpaid Work initiative, working alongside Clyde Climate Forest, and this is part of our environmental offerings in terms of South Lanarkshire and our Unpaid Work service. This is some of the examples of where this work has been taking place and where they've done the identified planting spaces, and that's been with groups of unpaid work service users, taking these, as I say, from the garden and putting these in specific plots to grow these in and around South Lanarkshire. Auchentibber Kitchen Garden, as well as I've spoken around, we have an annual harvest in fruits and vegetables grown, and that is shared with our homeless projects and service users, as well as work being undertaken round about our summer soup programme, which then moves on to our winter soup programme. And again, it's all about utilising the materials that we have available and ensuring people are able to also understand how they can deliver that at home and utilise community gardens in a way that benefits them and their local community. During the reporting period, we've had the winter growing session take taken place over February and March, and we've also received support from Castlebank Horticultural Centre to try and improve our knowledge and increase the number of products that we've been growing in the kitchen garden. This is some of the examples of some of the work that's taken place since and how that's been utilised across the service. Laundry project as well. So to discuss a wee bit about the emergency laundry provision that we provide to vulnerable adults and families. Again, this is based in our Auchentibber Resource Centre, and what we do is we support a number of different community projects in terms of laundering things like football kits, doing towels and stuff for holistic and therapeutic treatments, and also working with charities to launder and iron materials for charity shops. We've also worked in partnership with a number of different schools and community groups to look at laundering things like school uniforms, so that these can be provided to clothing banks and uniform banks, so that these can be passed on to children taking place moving forward in school. We've also done some work laundering graduation gowns, for example, to support the graduation ceremonies taking place across South Lanarkshire. Little mention there round about our annual winter jacket appeal. So over 2024, we saw more than 200 winter jackets being donated and laundered by Unpaid Work Services, and these were then successfully distributed between 10 South Lanarkshire schools. In June, we also undertook again the annual school uniform project and made that offering to all South Lanarkshire Council schools, and whether or not they would want us to be involved in laundering and donating some of those school uniforms that were then returned to the school uniform banks before the next session, so that families who required this could go in and accept the donated and laundered goods. I've put in a little slide here round about a new project that Unpaid Work have become involved in, and this relates to a community murals project that is working alongside Police Scotland. And what has happened is we've had Joanne Miller from the University of West of Scotland do some focus groups with some of the service users at Unpaid Work, with the view to speak about the themes that have impacted on people in terms of their involvement with the justice system, and particularly their experience of being detained within police custody. What they've then done is created the opportunity for a painted mural to be created by designated artists who work with SWG3, and those murals are going to now be signposts that will be added to the walls within the facility in Motherwell Police Suite. And what that means is that each of these murals will have dedicated provisions to direct and signpost people should they wish to accept supports and look at different service provision across the Lanarkshire area. So we're hopeful that this will be moving forward over the next few months, and that the dedicated artwork will be based on the themes that have been created as part of this mural project at Unpaid Work, and we'll hopefully be able next time round to be able to share the pictures of those murals and what they look like within the police custody suites. This is a picture in relation to a visit that we had in November 2024 from the Cabinet Secretary for Justice and Home Affairs, Angela Constance. So Miss Constance came and spent time with our Unpaid Work team to learn more about the work that we were undertaking in South Lanarkshire, and also to discuss aspects in terms of the things that we were doing round about education and about activities in terms of how we are supporting our local communities via Unpaid Work. So that was a welcomed visit, and we were able to have positive discussions in terms of how we would look to drive forward unpaid work across our services over the coming years. In conclusion, what I wanted to say was obviously we would welcome any feedback, and this is also an opportunity to hopefully let people know you may have received an invite from our team in relation to an open evening event that we are hosting on the 2nd of September, and that's between 4 and 6 o'clock, and we are inviting members of the public and any interested parties to come and spend some time at Unpaid Work and learn more about what we do and see again some of the outcomes that we've been able to achieve over the past 12 months. I've also added a link in terms of the referral form, so if there are any constituents who are looking for any additional work or tasks to be undertaken by our Unpaid Work service, we would welcome those referrals to be sent through to our team, and we will assess and work through a priority list in terms of trying to get as many of those tasks completed across South Lanarkshire as we can. I've copied in some details in terms of my contact details, so please feel free at any time to contact myself or any member of the team should there be anything further you would want us to do in terms of unpaid work or overall justice services. Please don't hesitate to contact me with any comments or queries, and we'll always do our best to try and get back to people and put in place what we can across unpaid work. So that's the end of my presentation. I can stop sharing, and I'd welcome any comments or any views or questions that people may have if I can answer them.
Thanks very much for that, Claire. Any questions? Anderson.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks for that presentation. I noticed that in the unpaid work data capture, there's 97,499 hours of payback order. We've only completed 62,000. That's 2/3. You know, it's split hairs. What happens with other third? Do we carry that forward to the following year, or is that built up from last year as well? The other thing that I've noticed that these Kilbride locality, we noticed 66 referrals, which is the lowest out of the 4 areas, and it's actually half of what is happening within the Hamilton area. So I'm just wondering what can be done to improve that, to get more done within East Kilbride. And last, I'm just wondering, when I see the photo of the school, it's quite heartbreaking to see these new schools like that on Kent. You go back to education and say to them, look, why is that allowed to become so bad that we need unpaid work to go in there? I know for a fact the ground services are in the schools, certainly the ones that Jerry and I represent, and they keep it nice. I'm just wondering how did that happen? I'm just wondering, do you go back to education and say, maybe do you keep in line, things like that? Because we should never get to that stage where you need to intervene. Thanks.
Thank you very much for those questions, and I'll go through that one by one. So in terms of the overall hours completed over the period of the year, that does also include aspects that would have been the follow on from last year. So again, dependent on the number of hours that are imposed as per each order, it does obviously accumulate, and we are continuously running potentially with a backlog in terms of hours for a number of different reasons, and that's with the number of supervisors that we're able to get out on shift, people showing up to be out on shift to complete their hours, are also some barriers in terms of us being able to successfully conclude all aspects of hours. As you can imagine, we also have processes where some people do not continue with their order, and for some reason they potentially end up going back to court. That could be through breach proceedings, or alternative disposal options can be put in place rather than unpaid work hours being successfully completed. So there usually is a difference in the number of hours we're able to conclude, given the number of hours that are actually initially imposed by the courts, and those are the data figures that I had provided you with earlier. But we actively and proactively work to ensure that we complete as many hours as we possibly can with the resources that we have, and we have put in place actions and measures to try and encourage and support as many people who get unpaid work to successfully conclude their orders by doing work out and about in our local communities. In terms of the local area referrals that we receive, so we have an online referral process, and we're actively trying to promote that referral process so that everyone is made aware of what is available that can be completed by unpaid work. And every time we get a referral, we will make a full assessment about whether it's an unpaid work task that can be completed, or whether we need to refer potentially to a different part of the service to get those tasks done. So in terms of online referrals, we have spoken about how we may be required to enhance potentially our social media profile and look at how we share information with members of our community so that they have an understanding of the ability to refer to unpaid work. So that's work that we're working on just now in terms of how we can enhance those referrals, and obviously through people like yourselves in terms of those discussions that you'd be having with constituents. It is again about letting them know that we accept self-referrals, we accept referrals from agencies and charities, and we are willing to look at the different tasks that can benefit the community. In relation to the aspect round about the school, I don't have the specifics in relation to those pictures about why unpaid work got involved at the stage that they did. What we will do is, if we see that there is potential for recurring works to be taking place in an area, so for example, if there was some particular reason why that work had to be kept up, what we will look to do is routinely encourage those referrals to come back in and set different squads effectively to go and support the ongoing work that needs to be done in key areas. So it may have been there was one particular reason as to why things had got to the stage where they felt it was appropriate to involve unpaid work. But what we would do is go in and do the work that's been asked of us, and then make checks about, is there anything additional that you feel that we would need to do? And in some occasions we'll go back maybe on a quarterly basis. If it's not work that will be picked up elsewhere by any other aspects of paid council employees, unpaid work will sometimes assist where there's a specific request to do so. So that offer's available again to local nurseries, primary schools, and different things like that too. So I don't know if that answers your question, or if there's anything else you'd want to come back on.
No, that's fine, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Christine.
Thanks, Chair. It wasn't really a question, Claire, but it's really just to thank you very much for your presentation, but just to highlight how impressed I've been with Justice Services in terms of how trauma-informed the service is. And through all the work that you've obviously highlighted in the presentation, it's just that combination of being both a therapeutic approach in terms of working with the people who are undertaking unpaid work, but also there's a destigmatizing element there as well. These individuals are contributing to the community and they're being seen as contributing to the community. And obviously, importantly as well, it all works towards reducing reoffending. So it's just really nice to see Justice Services in South Lanarkshire how it combines all those elements. Thank you.
That's very appreciated, Councillor Williams, and I'll make sure that that's shared with the team. And just to mention that we've also opened up our regular feedback through Care Opinion to Justice Services in this year as well. And we have been receiving a flurry of different reports in terms of the impact for people attending unpaid work and things that have been effectively a spring block effectively for people thinking about things like education, training, and some people even saying that they would like to come back and volunteer and help other people. So we're seeing that as a particular positive. And as you say, that trauma-informed approach and culture that we want to create is about how we support our local communities and help them better understand that we are here to support everyone in our communities and use unpaid work to the benefit so that everyone can become citizens in terms of their contribution to what they do across the community. So we really welcome that comment and opinion. Thank you for that.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? No? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Claire. We're going to move on to item 5, if we could just a 5-minute toilet break, please.
next year. I watched it. Oh, I know, I said that, Eric, I says, wait till you get so good. Exactly.
Bit less hilarity down in that end recently. Right, it's item 5, annual housing and homelessness update. Right, Carol Graham, the housing manager, speak to the report. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, everyone. Today,
Please.
oh, sorry, I thought.
Yes,
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Chair. Today, I'm here to give you an update on housing and homelessness for 24-25. The main recommendation being the committee approves this overview of the key activities across East Kilbride area during that period. By the way of background, you'll remember that the council declared a housing emergency on the 12th of June 2024 in response to a significant and sustained rise in demand for homelessness services. We're not alone in that. A number of other councils have made similar declarations. To give a bit more context, between 2021 and 2022-23, the council experienced a 28% rise in the increase of people, in the number of people coming to the council for help because they are experiencing homelessness. There was also a 38% rise in people who, after homeless investigation, were actually awarded homeless priority. And finally, and perhaps most starkly, the backlog of households in urgent need of housing doubled, an increase of 101%. Today's report covers the key housing and homelessness information for East Kilbride, including our current stock profile, the supply of new homes, allocations and lets, rent management and homelessness trends. So starting with the stock profile, as of the 31st of March 2025, the council owned 5,786 homes in East Kilbride, and that's about 22% of the council's total housing stock. The table that you see in 4.2 of my report shows the breakdown of properties across mainstream, amenity and sheltered categories. So 85% of the stock is mainstream, 8% amenity and 7% is sheltered housing. In terms of the size of council homes across East Kilbride, the table at 4.3 shows you the breakdown by number of bedrooms. I won't go through every figure, but you'll see that we have a large proportion of 1 and 2 bedroom properties. What may be more surprising is that there are 17 homes with 5 or more bedrooms. These properties, these larger properties, are rare to become available for let. As of March 2025, 80 properties in East Kilbride were void, representing less than 1% of the total housing stock in the division and 21% of voids across South Lanarkshire. There's a constant focus to ensure that voids are returned to the local housing team and ready to let as soon as possible. Through the council's affordable housing supply programme, there is also a constant focus on increasing the number of council homes available across East Kilbride. During 24-25, East Kilbride, we bought 82 existing homes. We purchased them through the market purchase scheme, helping to meet identified need. These acquisitions added 11 one-bedroom properties, 28 two-bedroom properties, 38 three-bedroom properties and 5 four-bedroom properties to the stock in the division. Any new build development sites in the area will be reflected in the annual update of the Strategic Housing Investment Plan, with the next update due to yourselves to be presented at Housing and Technical Resources Committee in December 25. But with a very recent example, we've just taken possession of over 40 barrack homes in the Jackton Hole area. In terms of allocations and lets, during 24-25, there were 499 council house and lets in East Kilbride, accounting for 25% of all lets across the South Lanarkshire area. And as you'll see in the table 5.5, the majority of lets were for 1 and 2 bedroom homes, almost 80% in total, accounting, which matches the pattern of our stock. The average number of days to let properties in East Kilbride was 18.15 days, which is slightly faster than the South Lanarkshire average of 18.87 days. I understand the performance in relation to allocation and lets alongside stock provision and letting targets is reported to Housing and Technical Resources Committee as part of the annual updates in terms of the local letting plans. Moving on to rent management, through our approach to rent management and collection, Housing Services continues to focus on maximising rent collection. In East Kilbride, the team collected just over 100% of rent during 24-25, 100.15%, which is very close to the South Lanarkshire average figure of 100.21%. Gross rent arrears covering both current and former tenants sat at 6.83% in East Kilbride, performed slightly better than the South Lanarkshire average of 7.1%. Over the year, there were 6 cases of eviction for rent arrears, all carefully managed by my teams at the local housing office. And finally, just to note that rent performance is reported twice a year to Housing and Technical Resources Committee as part of the resource plan and annually to the Housing Scottish Regulator through the Scottish Housing Charter. And the final part of the report in section 7 is around homelessness. So during 24-25, there were 573 homeless presentations in East Kilbride, accounting for 23% of the South Lanarkshire total of 2467. As of the 31st of March, the number of households awaiting their offer in East Kilbride was 437, accounting for 28% of the South Lanarkshire total of 1,543. This is a 3.5% reduction in the number of homeless households awaiting their offer as at the same point last year, 31st of March 2024. As of the same period, there were 221 households in temporary accommodation in East Kilbride, accounting for 28% of the South Lanarkshire total of 798 households. Of the 221 households, 93 contain a total of 160 dependent children. This represents 36% of the 441 children in temporary accommodation across South Lanarkshire at year end. During 24-25, the average time to close a homeless case in East Kilbride was 323 days, and this is 13% higher than the South Lanarkshire average of 285 days due to the demand and supply of housing in the East Kilbride area. During 24-25, the repeat homelessness rate in East Kilbride, measured as a homelessness application being made within 1 year of the previous one closing, was 4.4%, and this is slightly better than the repeat homeless rate for the whole of South Lanarkshire, which is 4.6%. During 24-25, 93.8% of households sustained their tenancy for more than 12 months following a period of homelessness, which is higher than the South Lanarkshire tenancy sustainment rate for homeless households of 91.3%. Supports to assist tenants in sustaining their tenancy is provided by the local housing team, including the use of the dedicated sustainment fund. So the next steps are that housing services will continue to manage their housing stock and support tenants to sustain their tenancies across East Kilbride. Updates and performance across the service will be reported to Housing and Technical Resources Committee. And the next annual housing and homeless update will be provided to East Kilbride Area Committee in September 2026. You'll know that there are no employee, financial or sustainability implications, and the report does not introduce a new stipulation or today. That's my report concluded. If anybody has any questions.
Very neat. Right, questions in?
Thank you. Hi, Carol. Thanks very much for the report, and I certainly keep your staff busy, so with all the housing inquiries in my area, so thank you very much to all their replies and help in difficult circumstances. I did want to ask a few East Kilbride specific questions, given our kind of new town history and the pressures that come with that, and also that things were built around the same time. Things are coming to an aging, sort of the stock is aging and so on, so it places a lot of demand on maintenance and things. What do you experience as the particular pressures of East Kilbride, and what are some sort of solutions that we're working on to address those specific issues?
Well, homelessness is a particular challenge in East Kilbride, and that's simply because demand over acquisition. To get higher this, sorry. Homelessness is a particular challenge for us in East Kilbride, and that's simply because demand outstrips supply. So, like I've said, we're trying to increase the demand, the supply of housing all the time. We do as much as we can to prevent housing from occurring in the first place. So, if somebody approaches the council saying that they're at risk of homelessness, we'll spend time with them trying to find other options, whether it be other landlords or remaining where they are, or maybe mediation for households breaking down and things like that. So we'll try and prevent it, and then other teams will try and keep people in the houses. So if people are experiencing difficulties with their tenancy, it's about providing them with support to sustain that tenancy in the first instance and not having the need to move on. So homelessness is probably the biggest challenge that we're going at this particular time, although there are many others.
Any comments about the aging stock and what to do about the backlog repairs and so on?
Well, property services are separate from housing services, so they would be better. I didn't realise that just goes off automatically. Property services are separate from housing services, so they would be able to give you a better idea about the backlog of repairs, but they are doing, they're examining that closely and they're working their way through the backlog as quickly as they possibly can. They're also recruiting new trades. The times they're using subcontractors when they're needed to get through the repairs backlog. And in terms of the ageing stock, that's about the housing investment programme and making sure that the money is going to the places where we need it most. So you've got a 5-year investment programme, and area house managers will add to that. They'll give comments about things that we particularly would like to see in our areas. So for example, one of my priorities, I'd love to see some work being done to backcourts, post-paints and stuff like that. So that gets fed into the housing investment programme also.
Thank you.
Anybody else? No. Well, thank you very much for that. Very interesting. So very interesting. Moving quickly on to the character budget micro grants update. I'll ask Kenny Lane, Programme Manager and Community Enterprise to deal with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Afternoon, councillors. Yes, very brief report update on the microgrants under the participatory budgeting reporting. So this report should come to area committees once a year, just on where the microgrants have got to. So as members will be aware, we established the microgrant fund back in 2019 using the renewable energy funds from the wind farms, and it was established so as community councils or other suitably organised groups could apply to manage the microgrants for the local area. The report just sets out the community councils within the East Kilbride area that had secured money in 24-25 and administered the funds, and that was a total of £20,000 in the last year. And then there's a little bit about how the process works, just in terms of the checks and everything else that we undertake, and then they can apply for the money for this year. At the point in time when this report was prepared, there was only one community council had submitted and been awarded the funds. I can report that since that date, 3 other community councils, Aldhouse and Chapelton, Jackton and Stonehouse, have all now also received their funds. So as I said, it's one of the briefest update reports you'll have, but that is the position where we are with the microgrant funds. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks for that, Ken. For comments or questions? Anybody? You go like McKinney. Okay, thank you very much for that.
Good.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Can move the report, promoting and ask for a second. Second. Okay. Ask if members are agreed.
Agreed.
Right, just
Agreed.
the report. Thank you. Right, we'll move on to next item, which is forward programme for future meetings. I'll invite Stuart McLeod to speak.
Thanks, Chair. The report provides members with a copy of the forward programme of business for meetings of the Kilbride Area Committee. As well as asking members to note the content of the forward programme, members are also invited to suggest future topics. As per the recommendation in section 2.1, members are asked to note the forward programme of business. Members further ask that members please send any suggested topics to myself by email. Thanks, Chair.
Any questions for Stuart? Okay, can I move the report and ask for a second?
Sorry, Chair, I'll second it. I can't get my microphone quick enough.
That's okay. Can I ask if members are agreed? Agreed?
Agreed.
Great, thank you very much. The item for decision number 8 is community grant applications. You all read the reports?
Yeah.
There are several, I think it's 7 of them. The report, the reports from grants, you've all read it. Any questions? Any queries?
Yeah,
You're
none at all.
You're all delighted, yeah? Okay, thank you very much. And here we go again. I'll move the report. Ask for a second.
I'll second it, Chair.
Right, Jerry, thank you. And ask if members are agreed. Thank you very much. No option business. Thank you very much for attending. Welcome back, Kilbride.
Yes, Chair.